Is this the exact spot you were standing on November 22nd, Mr. Holland?
That's correct. This is the exact spot that I was standing November the 22nd, waiting for the parade.
And where did you hear that third shot come from?
Right over about 20 or 30 feet from the other end of that little picket fence.
And where was the smoke that you saw?
It drifted right out underneath those green trees, those two trees.
From behind the fence?
From behind the fence. It kind of hung there just like for a few seconds, long enough that you could see that it was.
And then what?
Smoke.
And then what'd you do?
Immediately after the president's car came underneath this overpass, the four of us broke a run around this fence to find out if we could see anybody leaving the area.
Can we walk this way now that you went on the 22nd?
No, we can walk that way right now.
Fine.
We were trying to see what we could see, and
this was the direction you walked on the 22nd.
This was the direction. Made this right turn. Jumped this steam line, this pipe. One man right behind me jumped, and another one jumped right on top of him.
Fell on top of him?
Fell on top of him.
And were there more cars here on the 22nd than there are today?
They were bumper to bumper. Just a sea of cars. You couldn't hardly get through them. We were jumping over the bumpers, over the hood of the cars to work our way to the spot that we saw the smoke and heard the shot. Then we came up to the wooden fence.
Mr. Holland, did you remain behind here for a while when the police officers were searching the area?
Approximately 15 minutes before I had to go back to my office. There was about 40 or 50 people around here searching.
And what did you find here?
A lot of footprints behind this car, mud on the bumpers. And I looked around to see if I could find some empty shells or any evidence of a shot being fired and the bullet shell rejected from the gun. And this is where I saw the smoke from the third shot.
Right drifting out around here?
Just drifting out underneath these trees.
Where were you on November 22nd, Mr. Dodd?
I was standing on the underpass, Commerce Underpass in Dallas, Texas.
Were you there alone?
No, I was along with 3 friends of mine.
Railroad men?
Yeah, all railroad men.
Mr. Holland was one of them?
That's right.
And did you see anything which might indicate to you where the shots came from?
Well, we all 4 seen about the same thing as the shots. The smoke came from behind the hedge on the north side of the plaza, and a motorcycle policeman dropped his motorcycle in the street with his gun in his hand and run up the embankment to the hedge. And then I went north to look around the corner to see if there's anyone behind the hedge, and met Special Agent of the Katy Railroad, and he went down there, and I walked along with him to see if there were any tracks there, in which there were tracks and cigarettes butts were laying where someone had been standing on the bumper, looking over the fence or something.
Were you questioned by agents of any government agency on November 22nd, Mr. Dodd?
Yes, we were. We were taken over to the courthouse and questioned by, I suppose, Secret Service men of some kind. And they asked me quite a few questions, about the same as I've told you men here today.
But you were never called as a witness by the warrant?
No, I never was called.
because here's the Warren report, and in the index your name is not listed, and there's no reference in the whole 888 pages to the fact that you were up there and you saw what you saw, you heard what you heard.
Well, I don't know about that. But there was something that looks to me like that going on there that somebody should have found out something. A man walk up and shoot a man handcuffed to a couple of policemen and get away with it. Why, I figured there's something else was going on besides what it should be.
We are in Mesquite, Texas, in the home of James Leon Simmons, a car inspector for the Union Terminal Railroad. Mr. Simmons, how long have you been employed by the Union Terminal?
I've been employed by the Union Terminal 11 years.
Were you a witness to the assassination of President Kennedy?
Yes, I was standing on the Elm Street overpass at the time of the assassination.
Were you there alone or with others?
There was a group of employees from the Union Terminal at the time and 2 Dallas policemen.
What did you see and what did you hear?
As the presidential limousine was rounding the curve on Elm Street, there was a loud explosion. At the time, I didn't know what it was, but it sounded like a loud firecracker or a gunshot. And it sounded like it came from the left and in front of us, towards the wooden fence. And there was a puff of smoke that came underneath the trees on the embankment.
Where was the puff of smoke, Mr. Simmons, in relation to the wooden fence?
It was right directly in front of the wooden fence.
I show you a picture published by the Warren Commission as Commission Exhibit number 2215, which is a view of the Triple Underpass area. I ask you if you'd be good enough to mark with this pen with an X the area where you thought the shots came from and where you saw the smoke.
It was this area here.
After you heard the shot, and saw the smoke, what did you do?
I was talking with a patrolman Foster at the time, and as soon as we heard the shots, we ran around to the wooden fence. And when we got there, there was no one there, but there was footprints in the mud around the fence, and there was footprints on the wooden 2x4 railing on the fence.
Were you questioned by the Dallas police on that day?
Yes, I was.
Did you give your name to the Dallas police?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell them what you've just told me?
Yes, I did.
Were you subsequently questioned by agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
About a month later, I was questioned by the FBI.
Did you tell them what you told me and what you told the Dallas police?
Yes, I did.
Were you ever called as a witness by the Warren Commission?
No, sir, I wasn't.
This is the Warren Commission report. The back of it has an index of every person who is referred to by the Commission. Is your name present there?
No, sir, it isn't.
You think it's rather curious that you had such a fine view of the whole Dealey Plaza area, and you were among those who saw smoke coming from evidently behind the fence, and yet you were not called by the Commission as a witness?
Well, I always thought it peculiar, but I thought that's the way they did business.
Here's the Texas School Book Depository right here, isn't it?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you thought the shots came from another direction, didn't you, sir?
I thought they came from the knoll over here.
Well, let's just get down here. If you could just step down a minute, and let's take this marker and put an X where you think the pictures were, or the shots were.
Okay. As you can see, as we already said, this is Texas School Book Depository, which is at Houston and Elm Street. And a little side street here that ran down here, and it was a dead end. Well, right down in this area here was a knoll. as they call it there.
The grassy knoll.
Yes.
Just write grassy knoll.
Okay.
Okay, and just put an X from where you thought the shots were coming from.
Okay.
You just did that. Thank you. And I don't know what exhibit number this is, but we'll take care of that with court's counsel's permission a little later. Would you just write your name up there, Mr. Frazier?
Okay.
So we know it was you that put it there.
This patrolman was so close to the president that following the 3 shots, his uniform was spattered with blood.
Now, for late details, we go to newsman Tom Whalen at WBAP-TV, Fort Worth. Hang on.
This is Tom Whalen in Fort Worth. WBAP newsman James Darnell in Dallas on the scene of the presidential shooting, the shooting in which President Kennedy and Governor Connally were shot, has an eyewitness interview with a Mrs. Jean Hill. Here is the interview.
What is your name, ma'am?
Jean Hill.
From Dallas?
That's right.
And did you see the shooting, miss?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe what happened?
Yes, sir.
Will you do that now?
They were driving along, and we were the only people in this area on our side, and the shots came from directly across the street from us. And just as the president's car became directly even with us, we took one look at him, and he was sitting there. He and Jackie were looking at a dog that was in the middle of the seat, and about that time 2 shots rang out just as he looked up. Just as the president looked up, and these 2 shots rang out, and he grabbed his chest, and it looked like he was in pain, and he fell over in the seat, and Jackie fell over on him and said, "My God, he's been shot." And after that, more shots rang out, and the car sped away.
What kind of a car was that?
What kind of a car was it? The president's car.
I mean, where did the shots come from?
The shots came from the hill.
From the hill?
Yes. It was just east of the underpass.
Uh-huh. And,
we were on the south side.
Did you look up there where the shots came from, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Could you see anyone?
I thought I saw this man running, but I looked at the president, and for a while, and I looked up there, and I thought I saw a man running, and so right after that, I guess I didn't have any better sense. I started running up there too.
Uh-huh. And what is your name?
Jean Hill.
G-E-A-N?
J-E-A-N.
And J-E-A-N. And what's your address, Miss Hill?
9402 Bluff Creek.
9402 Bluff.
This is Mrs. Jean Hill of Dallas. Could you tell us what you saw?
Yes, Mary and I had come down to see the president this morning, and we tried to get a place where we could be away from everyone, and we, I guess, succeeded. As the car came down the hill toward us, he was on our side of the street, and the president and Mrs. Kennedy were in the back seat. They had a little dog between them looking at it, and just as the car came right in line with us, the president looked up, and just as he looked up, 2 shots rang out, and he grabbed his chest, and this real odd look came over his face, and he pitched forward onto her lap. And she jumped up over him at that and screamed and said, "My God, he's been shot." And there was just an instantaneous, sort of an instant's pause, and in the motorcade it momentarily halted, and 3 or 4 more shots rang out, and they sped away real quickly. And by that time I became aware of Mary tugging on my foot saying, "Get down, they're shooting." And it hadn't registered. I'd been so busy looking at the president.
You were in a very advantageous spot to see the president.
To see the president, but also to get shot.
There were many witnesses to the assassination. Many of them people who had come to town early in the day to find a place to watch the president and the First Lady. And I talked to one who saw it happen and took a picture.
And I took the picture. It so happened my picture, when I took it, was at the same instant that the president was hit. And that does show in my picture.
What does the picture look like?
It shows the president. He slumped. Jackie Kennedy was leaning towards him to see. I guess it all happened so suddenly. I don't think anyone realized, what had happened.
Did you realize what had happened when you heard the shot?
No, I didn't. There was, 3 or 4 real close together. And it was, must have been the first one that shot him, because that was the time I took the picture. And during that time, after I took the picture, and the shots were still being fired, I decided I'd better get on the ground.
Did people lie down on the ground?
I just know about myself and the ones right close to me. And, well, really, I just know about myself.
You did lie down?
I did. I was no more than 15 foot from the car and in line of fire, evidently.
The Warren Commission ignored the film evidence of a shot from the front. They were also selective in their choice of eyewitness testimony. 2 members of the Willis family told them of hearing shots fired from behind the president's car. However, other vital evidence they tried to offer went unrecorded.
The implication was persuading, yes, ma'am, because all they wanted to know was 3 shots that probably came from the depository building, which I never have doubted. That's about all they wanted to know. That about all got into the Warren Commission, really, that I heard 3 loud shots from the Texas depository.
The headshot seemed to come from the right front. It seemed to strike him here, and his head went back, and all of the brain matter went out the back of the head. It was like a red halo, a red circle with bright matter in the middle of it. It just went like that. It was a terrible time. You cannot imagine seeing this. You knew it happened, but you didn't want to believe it.
The particular headshot must have come from another direction besides behind him, because the back of his head blew off, and it doesn't make sense to be hit from the rear and still have your face intact. So he must have been hit from another position, possibly, in the front or over to the side. I really don't know where. But the back of his head blew off.
So I am very dead certain at least 1 shot, including the one that took the president's skull off, had to come from the right front. And I'll stand by that to my death, over my mother's grave.
We are in the basement of the Terminal Annex building on the northeast corner of Dealey Plaza. We're here with Mr. J.C. Price, the engineer in charge of the building. Mr. Price, where were you at the time that the presidential motorcade drove through Dealey Plaza?
Well, I went up to the roof and where I could get a better view of the cabin.
Is this where you were sitting on November 22nd, Mr. Price?
Yes, sir.
Right here?
Right here on this spot.
And where did you think you heard the shots come from?
From behind the overpass over there, triple overpass. That's where I thought the shots were coming from.
And where did you see the man run?
Over behind that wooden fence, past the cars, and over behind the Texas Depository building.
Did you give that information to the Dallas Sheriff's Department on the very day of the assassination?
Yes, I did. I'd say in about 30 minutes after the assassination.
Were you ever called as a witness by the Warren Commission?
No, sir. No, sir.
I show you this map published by the Warren Commission of the Dealey Plaza area and ask you if you would mark on it where you thought the shots came from.
Yes, yes, sir.
That's just behind the wooden fence where it joins the overpass. Is that correct?
That is correct.
We're now here more than 2 years after the assassination. Now, where do you think the shots came from on November 22nd?
Well, I can't be sure. It seems that from all information that's been gathered that
the shots came from the Texas Boat Depository, but I can't hardly believe that. Although I never did look over there at the building, but really I think the shots came from that direction. It seems that everything pointed to that fact that they came from the book depository building, but I can't buy that right now. That's about it.
May I have your name, please, sir?
Bill Newman.
Billy, tell me what you saw and what you felt. What happened to you?
We just come from left field after seeing the president and the first lady, and we were just in front of the triple underpass on Elm Street, and we were at the edge of the curve, getting ready to wave at the president. So
You were down under the viaduct, so to speak, weren't you?
Well, we were halfway in between
on the grass,
triple underpass. We were at the curve when the incident happened. But the president's car was some 50 feet still yet in front of us coming towards us, and we heard the first shot, and the president, I don't know who was hit first, but the president jumped up in his seat. And then as the car got directly in front of us, well, a gunshot apparently from behind us hit the president in the side of the temple.
Do you think the first gunshot came from behind you, too?
I think it came from the same location. Apparently back up on the mall, I don't know what you call it.
Do you think the shot came from up on top of the viaduct toward the president? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Not on the viaduct itself, but up on top of the hill, a little mound of ground there, the garden.
Mr. Brehm, where were you on November 22nd, 1963?
I had taken my 5-year-old son downtown to see the presidential parade.
This is a picture taken by Mr. Nix of the limousine at the time the shots were fired. Do you see yourself and your boy in that picture?
Yes, sir. This is myself and this is my son. On this frame here where the first shot hit the president, I would say that he was possibly 30 feet away when the first bullet struck, moved a little closer, and was possibly 20 to 25 feet away when the second bullet hit.
Did you see the effect of the bullets upon the president?
When the second bullet hit, there was the hair seemed to go flying. It was very definite then that he was struck in the head with the second bullet. And yes, sir, I very definitely saw effects of the second bullet.
Did you see any particles of the president's skull fly when the bullet struck him in the head?
I saw a piece fly over, in the area of the curb where I was standing.
And in which direction did that fly?
It seemed to have come left and back.
In other words, the skull particle flew to the left and to the rear of the presidential limousine.
Sir, whatever it was that I saw did fall both in that direction and over into the curb there.
You were a ranger during the war, correct?
Yes, sir, I was a ranger during the war. Took part in the invasion of France and was shot a couple of times. So, as I say, it's possibly like swimming. I hadn't heard that sound for many a year, but you don't forget it once you've heard a shot rounding, coming close to you.
Did you speak with newsmen on November 22nd and tell them what you saw?
Yes, sir, and told them simply that their 2 shots had hit the president and the direction that I had thought the bullets had come from.
Did you at any time that day make a statement which was televised?
Yes, sir. Fortunately, I was probably 15 to 20 feet away from the president when it happened.
Tell us exactly what you saw, sir.
He was coming down the street, and my 5-year-old boy and myself were by ourselves on the grass there on Palmer Street, and I asked Joe to wave to him, and Joe waved, and I waved, and the man...
That's all right, sir.
You go ahead, Charlie. As he was waving back, the shot rang out, and he slumped down in the seat, and his wife reached up toward him, and as he was slumping down, and the second shot went off, and it just knocked him down from the seat. I'm positive it hit him. I hope it didn't, but I'm positive that it hit him, and he went all the way down in the car. Then they speeded up, and I didn't know what was going on, so I just grabbed the boy and fell on him in hopes that there wasn't a maniac around. I'm sorry. I can't help you more, but I won't forget it.
Did you make a statement to the Dallas Sheriff's Office?
Yes, I did.
How long did you remain in the Dallas Sheriff's Office that day?
I would say about 3 hours to 4 hours.
Were you among the closest witnesses to the limousine when the shot struck the president?
Yes, sir, I would have to say that, if not the closest, one of the closest to the unfortunate incident. I did get a view of something I'll never forget.
Were you called as a witness by the Warren Commission?
No, I was not called by the Warren Commission to testify.
Immediately after the shots were fired, there, of course, was mass confusion, to put it mildly. But the area was immediately sealed off by, I would say, at least 50 police within 3 to 5 minutes. The first one to appear on the scene, other than those, of course, who were standing around, including 2 on top of the triple underpass, was one who rode a motorcycle up the incline coming up from the lower portion of Elm Street. And he rode perhaps 2/3 of the way up or more before he deserted his motorcycle. At the time of the shooting, in the vicinity of where the 2 men I've described were, there was a flash of light, or there was something which occurred which caught my eye in this immediate area on the embankment. Now, what this was, I could not state at that time, and at this time I could not identify it, other than there was some unusual occurrence, a flash of light or smoke or something which caused me to feel like something out of the ordinary had occurred there.
In reading your testimony, Mr. Bowers, it appears that just as you were about to make that statement, you were interrupted in the middle of the sentence by the commission counsel, who then went into another area.
Well, that's correct. I was there only to tell them what they asked, and so that when they seemed to want to cut off the conversation, I felt like that was, as far as I was concerned, that was the end of it.
Mr. Bowers, how many shots did you hear?
There were 3 shots, and these were spaced with 1 shot, then a pause, and then 2 shots in very close order, such as perhaps almost on top of each other, while there was some pause between the first and the second shots.
Did you tell that to the Dallas police?
Yes, I told this to the police, and then also told it to the FBI, and also I had a discussion 2 or 3 days later with them concerning this, and they made no comment other than the fact that when I stated I felt like the second and third shots could not have been fired from the same rifle, they reminded me that I wasn't an expert, and I had to agree.
Mr. Nunley, do you have any idea which direction the shots came from that hit the president or Connolly? Did you say that one of the shots came from one direction and one from another, it seemed like?
No, sir. Actually, I feel that they both come from directly behind where we were standing.
Right behind you.
The president, it looked like he was looking in that direction. I don't know whether he was hit first. Apparently he wasn't. It looked like he jumped up in his seat, and when he jumped up, well, he was shot directly in the head. And I don't know what you call it, the mall behind us, but apparently that's
where he was. I know that a few minutes after that, when I came over there and asked you people if you would be kind enough to come over and be on our station today, I know that the police were all taking off up the ramp and over.
Everybody was going in that direction.
Toward the railroad.
Yes, sir.
Cars back over in there.
I just hope the man that shot the president, I just hope they don't kill him. I hope he lives.
Mr. Nix, where were you on November 22nd, 1963?
Standing on the corner of Main
Houston.
And did you take any pictures of the presidential limousine as it went through Dealey Plaza?
Yes, I've taken pictures before and after, before the assassination and during the assassination.
And you know, of course, that your pictures were eventually used by the government to determine where the limousine was when some of the shots were fired.
Yes.
And did you deliver a copy of your film to the federal government?
Yes, I delivered a copy of my film to the federal government about December the 1st.
About a little over a week after the assassination.
Yes, my film got lost in the processing plant.
Where is the original film?
The original film belonged to United Press International. The government has a duplicate copy.
And where is that duplicate copy?
In the archives.
And is that the duplicate copy which was used by the Warren Commission for the purpose of determining, along with other films, the Muchmore film and the Zapruder film, where the presidential limousine was when some of the shots were fired?
I would say so.
Well, you now have a copy of your film, which you were kind enough to show to us this afternoon. Is that copy the same as the original which you gave to the FBI on December 1st?
I would say no. There is some films maybe missing, some frames. Some of the frames were ruined.
Does the film which you have at the present time have the same number of frames as the film which you delivered to the FBI on December 1st?
I would say no, but it's because of losing maybe a frame here and there.
At the time the shots were fired, did you look at the book depository building?
No.
Did you think at that time that the shots came from the book depository building?
No, I thought it came from a fence between the book depository and the railroad track.
Did anyone else who you know, who you've spoken with, also believe that the shots came from there?
Most everyone thought it came from the fence behind the book depository.
Did you have occasion to speak with Forrest Sorrells, who was, of course, a friend of yours, and the Secret Service agent in charge of Dallas that day?
Yes, I did.
Did he tell you where he thought the shots came from?
He thought they were coming from the same place.
Which is?
Behind the fence.
There was a motorcycle policeman that just stopped his motorcycle up by the monument and had drawn his revolver and was racing up the hill to the left of him. There was a deputy sheriff, which I think was stationed under the underpass, Buddy Walters. At this time, I says, you know, I felt something sting me on the face as I was standing down there. I said, just sting, and Walters looked at me and says, yes, says, you got blood on your cheek. He says, where were you standing? I says, well, down by the underpass. So we started walking down there, and when Walters got about, I'd say 10 feet away, he says, look there on the curb, there was a very visible mark on the curb where a bullet had struck. Either a fragment of the bullet or a piece of the concrete. It flew up and scratched my face. And he said, go to the city police headquarters and make a statement, which I did.
Mr. Tague, this is a picture of Dealey Plaza, as you know. I wonder if you'd be good enough to show me where you were standing when you heard the shots.
I was standing at the east end of the triple underpass between Commerce and Main. There's a little concrete divider there. It's about 3 feet wide.
And, sir, could you indicate where the bullet struck the concrete curb?
The bullet struck the curb on the south curb of Main Street. It would be right here.
And at the time that you first heard the shots, what was your impression as to the origin of those shots?
My first impression was that they had come from the left of me.
Would you indicate on the picture where that would be?
Up in this area here towards the hill.
Where in relation to that wooden fence?
Well, somewhere towards the wooden fence.
Mr. Tague, on the 22nd, when the shots were being fired, your first impression was that they came from the area near the wooden fence.
I ran across the Elm Street to run up there toward that knoll. It was, and we were stopped by a man in a suit, and he had a overcoat on his over his arm, and I saw a gun under that overcoat, and his comment was, "Don't y'all come up here any further, you could get shot or killed." One of those words.
Several police officers are rushing.
From the moment the president was killed, many eyewitnesses testified that they believed there was a man with a gun on the grassy knoll. One eyewitness was Malcolm Summers, who reenacted his experience for Nova.
After the motor van had passed, I waited about a minute, and then I came running over across to the knoll. But when I got here, I was stopped by a person in a suit with an overcoat over his arm, thrown over his arm. Also had a gun under his arm. It looked like a little machine gun to me, a small machine gun.
Malcolm Summers was one of several eyewitnesses, including at least one Dallas policeman, who ran into people claiming to be federal officials and who were never found. Chief Counsel for the House Assassination Committee, Robert Blakey.
A careful examination of where all of the Secret Service agents were that day and their duty assignments indicates that no Secret Service agent was in that area.
When you ran across the street, let's see, you've seen the Zapruder film of the assassination.
I have seen it,
Okay.
I mean,
you were almost directly in front of him. You were down a little farther, but you were almost directly in front of him. When you ran across the street, did you run straight or to the left or to the right?
To the right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how far did you go before you ran into this guy that you were talking?
Well, this person, he was standing probably about 5 to 10 feet from the street. It goes by in front of the school book depository where everybody was running, and the sidewalk of the school book depository. From the top of the knoll, he was standing probably 3 to 5 feet away from that particular spot.
Oh, okay. Let's see if we can pinpoint this a little better. I know you've been back to the plaza many times, and you know about where Zapruder stood.
Yes.
How close to where Zapruder was did you meet this man?
I would say, just guessing distance, I'd say 50 foot.
50 feet.
40 to 50 feet,
40 to 50 feet to the right as you look at it.
It would have been to his left, Zapruder's
left?
His left, to my right.
Okay. And you saw the barrel of a gun?
Sticking out from under that coat. I mean, just because the coat covered it up. It wasn't sticking out. Retract that. It was just under there, because if you, I never really tried it, but if you hold your coat over your arm and you got a gun in it, well then it doesn't droop over the gun or anything. It was just even or flush with the gun.
And this was a white guy?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And
very well groomed guy.
Glasses, mustache?
No, he didn't have any glasses. No mustache.
Okay. And he told you what?
He said, y'all better not come up here. You can get shot or killed. One of the statement like that. And which one? Because he was so excited and you revved up there, you wasn't listening to nothing except don't come up here. And, and you just put that with that man was authority to say don't come up here. Well, I didn't think anything about anyone else would, say you can't come up here. Like you, for instance, I would have ignored you or someone like that. And that's why I paid attention to this person.
Did you see him talking to anyone else?
I did not see him talking to anyone else, because by then I did want to turn around and go on back over there and call my wife real quick and get her on the phone, see the events as they were happening. And that was my reason why I didn't linger around to go longer or just wait and see what happened, because I wanted to get back over there real quick.
Does this guy have a hat on?
Yes, he had a hat on.
What kind of hat?
Stetson, I guess, one of them just regular brim hats. Not a wide brim hat, just a regular dress hat that I'd call it. Certainly wasn't a Texas hat or anything of that sort, but it was just a dress hat that people wore. And he was a well-groomed person. I mean, he was. He's not the normal person that would have went to see a parade unless they happened to step out of their building or something like that. You know, that they was in their office, they wouldn't step out here and get closer view.
So he gave you the impression that he was an authority of some type?
Yes, sir. And that's exactly what he says. You don't come up here. Well, you tell me, you know, the same way or anywhere else. Don't come in here, don't come there.
And how long after the shooting did this happen?
I'd say 3 minutes, however long it took them the rest of the procession to clear out, you know, where I didn't want to run across the street where they were still trying to get out of here and get to the hospital.